everyone, it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be sharing 10 books that I think you need to read. So this is a video that honestly I keep meaning to make a staple on my channel, but then I keep on forgetting about it for some reason. So I've done it twice before, I believe, and I haven't done it in a really long time. So I have a lot of books here that like I haven't talked about for a while now, but I'm so excited to share them with you guys. So the whole concept of this video is that these are books that there's really no like unifying factor other than that they are books that I truly love and definitely recommend and think that everyone should read. Basically, the idea of this is that it gives me the opportunity to talk about like my top tier books that I would recommend, just some random books of all sorts of different genres. And yeah, I really love doing these videos, so I am going to try and do more because I had a hard time narrowing this down to just 10 books. So I definitely need to put this in the regular rotation more, but let's just get into the books. So in no particular order, the first book that I'm going to be talking about is They Went Left by Monica Hesse. This is actually the second book of hers that I've read, although I own 3 of them. I've only gotten the chance to read The Girl in the Blue Coat, and she writes historical fiction and she's also a journalist, so you can tell they're very well researched and it just comes through in the writing. So this book in particular is really different because it is actually set after the events of World War II. So you are following a Jewish girl who has been displaced. She just was able to be liberated from a concentration camp and all of her family has died, but she's trying to find her brother because they were separated and she told him that she would find him again. So it's following her as she is trying to find her brother. She's trying to find safety and security for the first time after being through such a terrible and horrifying experience. This was such a powerful and difficult read, but I loved the fact that it showed you that side of things because I've never like read anything or really heard of anything that is set after the events of the war and is following someone who went through such an experience and now has to try and live a normal life again. Like, how do you return to normalcy after all of your family has been murdered? Like, how do you even do that? And I felt like this book did a really good job of capturing the difficulties of that, of just getting the emotions that come with that, and also being really educational about like what happened to these people and how organizations tried to help them get on their feet again. So I think this is an incredible read, really powerful, and definitely if you really like World War II historical fiction but kind of feel like you're reading the same sorts of ones again, I feel like this is a good one to kind of switch things up. Next up is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. So this is the cutest, like it is such an adorable YA romance. So this is a female romance and you follow a character who is living in a town that doesn't really accept her. So she isn't out and proud because she knows how people will deal with that. And particularly the main character hopes to be a doctor and she ends up having issues where a scholarship falls through. So the way that she is planning on getting this scholarship is by competing for prom queen. Now prom is like a big like pageant thing in the town that she lives in. So whoever wins prom, like they get a scholarship, but like it's a very like elite thing. Like you're not allowed to go to prom with someone of the same sex. Like there are a lot of really messed up rules to it, but she is coming to shake things up. So I think this was so great. I loved the characters, loved the romance. It was adorable, but also had a fantastic message to it and did a great job of conveying that. I feel like the relationship had a lot of facets to it because it wasn't just like a cute romantic relationship. There was also that deepness to it where there was kind of a conflict between the two characters and how out they wanted to be. And you also had such a really passionate main character because she wants to be a doctor to try and cure the disease that killed her mother, or not cure it, but help people who they are suffering like her mother did, and her brother also has this. So she has like that passion, and you can see the root behind it. So this had a lot of levels to it, and it was just a fantastic read, and definitely has made me want to read more from this author. So I'm really looking forward to more of her writing. Next up is The Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds. So I picked this book up on a whim entirely, and I'm just so glad that I did, because I definitely have found like a new favorite author in Justin A. Reynolds, because his writing is fantastic. Like the banter, the characters, it was just so fun, but also such a heartbreaking story at the same time. I feel like you'll kind of get from this list that I like stories that like make me feel something. Like even on the story graph, there's like a graph where a pie chart really, that shows you like what the moods of your reads are. So there's like adventurous and emotional is always like the biggest piece of the pie there. I just like things that I feel like impact me, and this is definitely a book that did that. So this follows Jack and Kate, and Jack meets Kate, they fall in love, and then Kate ends up dying, and her death ends up sending Jack through this loop where he keeps going back to the beginning and when they met, and he keeps going back to that beginning and then trying to prevent her death. So it's just like a contemporary with a twist, with a really great romance to it, but also like obviously so heartbreaking. Such a difficult read. Like you see Jack going through so much and you're just rooting for them, but it seems like all the odds are against them, and you just are on the edge of your seat the entire time, because it really keeps you guessing. You don't know how it's going to end, because it's like a twist on the typical story. So I loved that this was a unique, fresh, new voice to YA, and I have his other book and I cannot wait to read it. Next up is We Are Not Free by Traci Chee. So I have talked about this book quite a bit this year, but that is for good reason. I think that this should be required reading for everyone, and everyone needs to pick it up, particularly with the recent violence that has broken out against Asian Americans. This is like a more important read than ever. So this is a story that is following 12 Japanese teenagers. I think it's 12 or 13 or 14. I can never remember exactly how many, but it is following 14 Japanese American teenagers who are taken from their homes and brought to these incarceration camps. And you follow the 14 different perspectives there as the war goes on and they are facing such prejudice and terrible conditions. It's a really hard read, but it was so well done. The writing was incredible. It's actually own voices, so it's based off of the author's family and some of their experiences that she was told about, and it just will completely open your eyes to things. Like, for example, I didn't know that these incarceration camps also existed in Canada, and I feel like a lot of people didn't know that either, and it's absolutely horrible, but I think that it's necessary to be educated on things like that, and this did such a great job of that while providing a heart-wrenching story that like you cannot forget. It's haunting but beautiful at the same time, and just really well done. Next up is Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Lynn Soloman. So I think this is the book that I've read the most recently on this list, but this is one that I was actually sent unsolicited. I didn't really know anything about it, and then I was just looking for something that I would like after having kind of a string of not so great reads. So I picked this up because it was the highest rated contemporary on my TBR, and wow, was I surprised. Like, I really liked it. So this is an academic enemies to lovers story, and it follows characters who they are graduating, and in between their graduation they have to do, like, their school has this tradition of doing a scavenger hunt around Seattle, and the two characters end up teaming up, although they are usually academic rivals. They've been like neck and neck all throughout high school, so they have to team up, and then obviously as they're teaming up they get to know a little bit more about each other, and they just had fantastic chemistry. Like, you could see from the beginning, even when they were enemies, that like there was a little bit there. So I totally bought it, even though enemies to lovers generally isn't my favorite. I thought this one was fantastically done, and I also liked how it dealt with that really difficult transitional period in between high school and college. college, and how like the main character felt like she didn't do enough in high school, and she's also so worried for her future because she's a romance author, but she's kind of embarrassed because people, not that she's embarrassed, but she's afraid of the judgment of other people because people discount romance so much. So I just had like a blast reading this. It also has Jewish representation, which was really well done, and I loved the scavenger hunt. It added a fun element to it, so this was just super great and like such a great surprise to me. Next up is Tiny Pretty Things by Dhonielle, Clayton, and Sona, Charaipotra. So this actually was adapted into a Netflix show, and I haven't really gotten the chance to watch it yet, to be honest, but I have talked about this book because I read it last summer, and it's another one that like completely surprised me with how much I enjoyed it. So this is set at a ballet school in New York, and you follow 3 different girls, and they all have very like different personalities, different views on things, but there's a lot of like twisted, mysterious things that are happening. It's kind of dealing with like bullying and the cutthroat world that is ballet, but probably like really dramatized. Is that a word? Dramatized? Is that the word? You know what I'm trying to say. But this for sure was an edge of your seat kind of read. I particularly like, I remember reading this and I was listening to the audiobook while I was playing Roller Coaster Tycoon, like the original that used to come in the cereal boxes, because I ended up getting it on my Mac, and then I spent months playing it during the summer, and it was beautiful. But then I also had to clean the house, so I was listening to it while cleaning the house, and I just remember being like, many times I had to stop and be like, what is happening? So it's like a twisted web, lots of drama, so if you're looking for a high stakes dramatic read, totally a great one and one you need to read. Next up is Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender. I cannot recommend this book enough. It is just so good. Like, just as beautiful as the cover is, it is just as beautiful inside. So you are following Felix Love, who is a transgender boy who he has never been in love, and he finds himself in this quasi-love triangle and trying to deal with that after he has experienced transphobic bullying someone at his school, and he's trying to figure out who. They have revealed his dead name and pictures of him before he transitioned, and obviously that's really traumatic and a terrible experience. And as this is all happening and he's dealing with this love triangle and confusing emotions, he's also trying to learn more about his identity and who he really is. So there's a lot on Felix's plate, and this is definitely a book, when I say like a book has a lot of levels, this one has all of it. It has such lovable characters, it has adorable moments, it has really fun and engaging moments, and it also has a ton of emotion to it. I loved that it was really like a roller coaster, and I felt so much for Felix and his story and everything he was facing, and it definitely was just like a book that completely blew me away. I understood all the hype. Like, I feel like I was like 20 pages in and I already understood it. So definitely there is a reason that you're hearing about this book so much. You should pick it up if you haven't already. Next up is Slay by Brittney Morris. So this is a really cool story because it deals with characters who they made this whole video game world, and it just is so vibrant. So this video game world is particularly geared toward Black gamers, so it is a safe space for them to game and have a space where they aren't going to have to face racism or anything like that. But it also has a murder mystery sort of thing going on. I mean, not so much a murder mystery, but someone ends up being killed because of something that happens in the game. And the main character who built this game, she is anonymous, like no one knows that she's the one who did this. But then as this terrible thing has happened, there's a lot of questions about who built this game and all of the things behind it. So she comes under scrutiny, but she's still trying to protect herself and hide her identity. And it just has like a lot going for it once again, because while it has that kind of, I don't want to say political drama because that's not what it is, but that drama with that situation, it also has some family and like friendship and like wholesome sort of things going on too. So it has kind of like two storylines going on that intersect. I don't think I'm explaining this very well, but basically it's a really high stakes situation, but there's also some more like relatable situations too. And I liked the combination of the two. I thought the game seemed so cool and I loved the idea of it. And I also loved the writing. It hooked me, gripped me right from the beginning. So definitely, I actually have another book by this author too that I need to read soon. Next up is The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys. So I had an arc of this book for a really long time before I finally ended up reading it like a year ago now, and I was kind of skeptical going into it. I just felt like I hadn't heard all that much about this book, and I have read pretty much, except for one, all of this author's other historical fictions, and I have loved them, but I just hadn't heard a lot about this one, so I was kind of skeptical. But maybe it's because of that I totally was transported into this story. It's very, very like rare that I will remember a lot about a book, but this one I remember a lot of specific moments. I remember the characters and I remember just being like totally like feeling for them. Like I had like a physical reaction to it. I have a terrible memory, so I never remember those things, but with this book, I do. And I can't really explain why. I don't know if it's because it was like the first book that I spent a long time like that really sucked me in after like COVID started and I had a hard time reading. I could not explain to you what it is, but this is set following the Spanish Civil War and Spain is under a dictatorship, and you are following a Spanish main character who she sees the truth of things. Her parents were killed, like she knows how awful things are there, but then it's also a time where there are a lot of tourists coming, so you follow a tourist who has come from America and he sees another side of things. So there are a lot of things going on in the story, a lot of individual stories that you might be like, why is this happening? But it ends up really coming together in the end and all making sense, and it is fabulously done, like completely captures everything. I felt like I learned so much, like so many things that I didn't know that are absolutely horrible. It's just like really great, and I feel like it should be hyped up more because I feel like it was a fantastic historical fiction about a time period and a place that I hadn't really read about, I didn't know that much about. So I really loved this, obviously. Okay, and finally is the only fantasy on this list, although there are some more that I definitely can think of, but I will include that the next time I do a video like this. So the one that I want to talk about today is Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. This fantasy has gotten a lot of hype, and it is for good reason because it is so unique. So you follow a main character who she is just desperate for human connection because she has been kind of kept at an arm's length from everyone. She's been really isolated her entire existence, and she has this mother figure known as the lady, but she doesn't get to see her. She's never near her. So she's just desperate for someone and something to love and have a relationship with. So when there ends up being this opportunity to do that through, like, I'm not good at explaining this, but basically your Ray can like connect to the prince, and there's like 8 or something of them who they connect to him, and then they like live with him forever, and they have this special bond and they protect him. So she gets the opportunity to do that, and it turns out that the lady is actually going to use that to try and kill the prince, and she does not want to do that, but she's so desperate for connection that this seems like the perfect opportunity. So there are a lot of things going on in here. It was like really, really interesting and super cool. I loved the world. I loved the characters. The concept was so interesting. The world building was fantastic. Like, I just cannot wait for the sequel for this one because it totally blew me away and I really enjoyed it. Okay, so those are 10 books that I have read like in the past year, really, that I think that you need to read. Like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but I do like doing this video to kind of showcase those reads that really stand out to me. So the idea of it is kind of, if like you watch all of the videos that I do like this, then you'll get kind of my like top picks. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please do let me know if you plan on reading any of these, or if you have read them as well, or what book you think everyone needs to read, because I don't know, that just seems like fun. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in a new video soon. Bye!